Good Tuesday morning. Steve Marchand here with Move the Goalpost with today's edition of 5 Minutes of Your Time. Today, going to focus on the myths and facts of down ballot drop off. Down ballot drop off is basically the phenomenon that people, as they move down the ballot, they go in mainly to vote for president, governor, and federal office, and then often will vote less often, leaving them blank as they get down to state senate, state house, and so forth. There's been a lot of talk about this in the last 20 years of my activism, but I haven't seen a lot of data on it. So I took some time through my work and identified three myths and one important fact that relates to this down ballot drop off idea. Statement number one, a myth. Well, one reason Republicans win more down ballot seats than Democrats is because their base may be smaller than the Democrats' base, but they are more intense voters. Now, this probably was true 15 plus years ago, mainly because high information, high income voters, largely from the suburbs, were predominantly Republicans back in the days of Reagan up through the early days of George W. Bush. However, that's no longer true. Indeed, the suburban voters have moved rapidly towards Democrats, not just because of Donald Trump. He did accelerate that trend line. And there is a correlation between those kind of communities and intensity of voting. And at this point in New Hampshire, where voter turnout is very high in all elections across the board, this generally is just not true. Look at this. Partisan leaning has no correlation at this point to down ballot participation. I took a snapshot of about the midpoint of voter participation in state rep seats. That's a collection of largely random towns. There's the percent of people that walked into the ballot box and then made it down to state representative. And you can see we have everything from R plus 12, that is to say 12 points more Republican voting than the state overall in places like Rochester, to little towns like Washington and Randolph that are D plus 15, D plus 16. And then we have a lot of middle of the road places like Troy, R plus 4, or Winchester, D plus 1. Irrespective of the partisan leaning, you can see there in that snippet, they're all voting at virtually identical rates and very high rates. So that is a myth. Myth number two, a lot of people just don't make it down to state senate or state house. It's just, regardless of party, a lot of folks just don't know who's running and they just don't make it down there. But that's also largely a myth. Here are the facts. The average percent of voters who walk into the ballot booth and then make it all the way to state rep in single seat districts is about 97%. Then keep this in mind. Only about 98% of people that walk into the ballot booth vote for governor. A couple percent don't even vote for the first one. So there's virtually no difference between people that walk in and check a box for governor and then just keep on going down in single seat house districts. It's only about 1% drop off. Here's the third myth. Generally speaking, who the candidates are in these down ballot races doesn't really impact who wins and loses much. Nobody knows who they are anyway. But that largely is a myth as well. I use a tool I created called PAYCO. We'll have a separate edition of this soon on PAYCO, points above expected candidate outcome. Basically, it's a model that simulates what a replacement level generic Democratic candidate would have gotten in any race, and then compares it to what the actual candidate who ran in that race got. The difference, the delta, is PAYCO. Anything below about 2 suggests that the candidate who did run probably faced some challenges. 2 to 3.25 is about average, and a PAYCO above 3.25 is a positive sign. Likely something very good, unique, and native to that district is going on that's worth teasing out. Well, here are a bunch of districts that are Republican leaning, some by quite a bit, R plus 6 in there, R plus 4. And in every one of these districts, at least one Democrat won a seat, despite the Republican leaning. Look at those PAYCO scores. It is not a coincidence. In virtually every district where there was a Republican lean, but one or more Democrats won a seat, the PAYCO score was unusually high. And it turns out that when you dig into those specific stories, they often have very important common characteristics, as in They were local elected officials who stepped up to run for state representative, or they're people that were longtime business leaders or had served in municipal office. There are a lot of commonalities to Democrats that have done very well in Republican districts, which suggests the voters, when they get down to that part of the ballot, do recognize the difference. High quality candidates, especially in close races and races that lean in the other party, really, recruitment does matter. So then, what is true? This is what's true. In single seat districts where there's only one House vote, one candidate for one district, voters participate at very similar levels as governor, US Senate, and Congress. 97, 98% of people that walk in vote for governor, and almost the same amount vote for state house. But as soon as you get to a multi seat district, 2, 5, even 10 in some places like Derry, voter participation down ballot drops by 8 to 10 points. Why? Because voters are rational. Basically, they understand, as you can see here, it goes from 97% to about 89%. Because if you watched Schoolhouse Rock as a kid like I did, they never had a thing about what to do when you had to vote for up to 6 candidates for a state rep seat in a small district that in most of the country, the districts would be much bigger and there'd be many fewer seats. It looks weird. And so people who are rational are afraid that they may vote for too many. And if they do, that it may spoil their entire ballot. And let's face it, most of them went in originally to vote for things like president, governor, US Senate, and Congress. And they're not going to mess it up because they didn't quite know what to do with the 5th or 6th best candidate in a large district. They are rational beings. But it is important information, and it's something we should learn from. That's a quick take there. My presentations have a lot more on this phenomenon, and there are things I'm working on right now to try to address it to improve participation rates in multi-seat districts down at the House level. You can visit my website, movethegoalpostnh.com, for more information like this. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Steve Marchand NH. Got a lot more of this coming on, as well as some exciting other multimedia and digital products that will be coming out soon. I hope you enjoyed those, and I hope you enjoyed this. Enjoy your Tuesday.